So hit it.
Hello and welcome to This is the Play Sports, the podcast. It's good to be with you again. Hey, there's a lot of exciting things to talk about. Why waste any time? Let's jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, okay. So first quarter, obviously you guys know the format. We talk 4 quarters, 4 topics of discussion. We're going to implement a new halftime segment as well. Special guest, big treat for all you listeners out there. Then we'll do our parting shots to close out here. But first quarter, I think we're going to save probably the best story for maybe after halftime. Let's start with the first quarter. We're going to talk Utah Jazz. They're going to be kicking off their regular season of the 2022-2023 campaign this week on Wednesday against the Denver Nuggets. I think I've asked you this every week that we've talked about the Jazz up to now. I'll ask you again. How excited are you about the start of the season? Or the season in general, I should say.
I think I'd be more excited to watch two guys fish than watch a Utah Jazz game this year. I anticipate the Denver Nuggets, if they want to get off to a good start, will probably be 1-0 and the Jazz 0-1 later this week.
I think that's a pretty good prediction. And in regards to your fishing comment, I think it would depend maybe who the fishers are, the fishermen. I think,
and if the fish are biting.
But I think maybe in any event, it might be more interesting than what the Jazz put up. I don't think it's any secret the Jazz retooled their roster, trading away almost every starter with the exception of Mike Conley. They're going for the tank. And yeah, I do think the Nuggets are going to win the first game. I think the Nuggets are probably going to be one of those sleeper teams in the Western Conference. So I expect them to throttle the Jazz early and often in the game on Wednesday. And then here's the interesting thing: the Jazz aren't going to have to wait long to see an old friend, because the very next game on Friday, they head north to the Twin Cities where they'll face Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yep, that's going to be real interesting to see how he and Karl Anthony Towns can play together. But they were excited to get him, and they obviously gave up a lot to get him. Mm-hmm. And so that should be interesting. But the Jazz, boy, it's a tough sell. I know they had one of their preseason games earlier this year. They, from what I understand, barely drew about 8,000 fans to the game. There doesn't seem to be a lot of excitement here. And maybe that'll change if they end up getting one of the first 2 draft picks, especially the number 1 draft pick. But it could be a long winter.
Yeah, and I think what's so funny is, like, I think we've gotten so used to being so excited about the Jazz as of late. I mean, how often, the last 2 summers did we go into the regular season thinking, oh, this will be the year they break through? They're not going to break through this year. They're going for the basement, really. And the other thing that kind of strikes me as funny about this Jazz season, I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if you remember this, but the Jazz are hosting the NBA All-Star Game this year. Have you seen any marketing, promotional materials gone out about that?
Just a little bit. It's going to be expensive, regardless of how good or bad the Jazz are. Tickets to the NBA All-Star Game are not cheap.
Here's my question for you. Will the Jazz have a representative in that game?
I can't see. Possibly. Maybe the trainer?
The trainer might, yeah. He might. I don't know who he is, but I'm sure he's good.
I think the Karl Malone, John Stockton co-MVP thing, not going to happen this year, because when you have 0 guys in the All-Star game, it'll be interesting. And, I was thinking about the All-Star game a little bit, and I think it may end up being a LeBron James tribute game.
Could be. You think this could be one of his last All-Star games?
Yeah, I know he wants to play with Bronny and play in the NBA and all that, but at his age and with the things he's got going, you never know when his last All-Star game will be. And if for some reason this is it, then Utah will be fortunate to host one of the greatest players of all time, maybe in his last All-Star game.
Yeah, I think that'll be cool. I think even here, I do have a prediction for you, and it kind of coincides with my other prediction that I have for the Jazz season. I think my one prediction was that Jordan Clarkson is going to start the year with the Jazz, and he'll finish with another team. He'll be traded at the deadline. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets an All-Star nod, because he's going to be shooting 20 shots a game. His stats are going to be inflated. I'm sure they're going to, Ryan Smith is going to lobby for at least one Jazz man to represent the team in front of the home crowd. So my prediction is Jordan Clarkson will be the Jazz's lone All-Star.
I think that's a possibility. And let's remember, too, the NBA All-Star game is not really contingent on the home crowd being happy. You're seeing the greatest players of the game come to your city for the game. It's not really something that most of us can afford to go to. A lot of those tickets are corporate giveaways to have big sponsors and that. So it'll be fun, but, I could see that happening. And heck, if Mike Conley can be an all-star one year, why can't Jordan Clarkson?
I don't think that'll happen for Conley again. I think his better years are behind him. But anyway, so let's let the Jazz season about to be underway. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to quarter two. Again, let's save the best story of the week for another quarter. Let's heighten the suspense here. We're going to talk a little college football here. I don't know if you're aware of this. I think this is something that may have slipped under the radar for most people. But there's an undefeated football team in the state of Utah right now. Were you aware of that?
I am, simply because we live in Centerville. We live short distance away from Ogden, Utah. We're home of the Weber State Wildcats.
Mm-hmm. Weber State, the lone undefeated team in the state right now. They're 6-0. They're ranked 5th in the country in FCS play. Not to mention, it's been a really good season for them. I know they kind of had a down year last year, a couple of losses that they don't typically have in the Jay Hill era. This year, though, it seems like they're firing on all cylinders, including a pretty big Super Bowl-esque win over Utah State in Logan. So
yeah, that game is huge. If you think about it, that Weber State went up to Logan and beat the Aggies 35-7. I mean, that's unheard of. So kudos to the Wildcats for pulling that one off. And
it just shouldn't happen is like the reality, right?
Right.
As much as like Weber State is a great FCS school, they have, pretty nice facilities for that level of football. Utah State should not be getting blown out by them. It was kind of a disastrous game for the Aggies. But really, I think it probably speaks more to how good Weber State is now at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. Obviously Utah State saying that, this game would be like the Super Bowl for Weber State, and Weber State went up and made it like the Super Bowl. They had a super time up there, and I'm sure that bus ride back to Ogden was a lot of fun. But, that was impressive. And, in Utah State, they've kind of righted the ship a little bit. They've had injury to Logan Bonner, but they pulled off a couple nice wins in the Mountain West.
They beat Air Force and Colorado State most recently.
And they're the defending Mountain West champions. So for Weber State, that was quite a W. And be interesting to see how they do as they get into the meat of the Big Sky Conference. They can keep winning in that. And, we know Jay Hill, and he's a great guy, and he's got a great staff up there. And they work hard, and it's kind of fun to watch them progress. And especially, after last year when Utah State, and BYU all had great years, and Weber was down a little bit. Roles are kind of reversed, that not severely, but fact is Weber State's back.
They didn't get to be in that conversation of like the great teams we had last year. Yeah, that's for sure. I think another thing we have to, if we're talking about Weber State, we also have to talk about Weber State alums had a big week in the NFL last week. Taron Johnson plays cornerback for the Buffalo Bills, picked off Patrick Mahomes in the last minute of the game in a big win over the Chiefs. Also, probably the bigger story was a guy named Rashid Shaheed, who scored on his first ever NFL touch in the New Orleans Saints loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. Did a little jet sweep around the corner and took it home for 44 yards for a touchdown on his first touch.
Yeah, the guy's got wheels. He had wheels at Weber State. He is a well-known guy, and it's nice to see him get that opportunity in the NFL. Yeah.
I think especially a lot of local people around here, typically tune in to Saints games hoping to see a bit of Taysom Hill magic. They also got a little bit of a Weber State guy finding the end zone, so that was pretty exciting. We should mention, not going to touch too much on it, but BYU also played last week. They had a kind of kind of a tough loss to Arkansas. They lost 52-35. They've got serious concerns about the defense. I think Kalani Sitake might need to make a change there.
Well, that was, it's just one game, and they play Liberty this week, which will be a challenge. Liberty's a good football team. They only have one loss. They won game at Old Dominion. They lost to Wake Forest when a 2-point conversion failed, or they'd be undefeated right now. And they've had some injuries at quarterback and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if the combination of Liberty being a little shorthanded or having to do things on the fly offensively, how that'll fare against the BYU defense. It's obviously reeling a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of speaks to how difficult it is to build a coaching staff with the kind of restrictions, in place. They need to be members of the church, so they don't always get the.
Well, not necessarily.
Don't agree with that?
The assistants.
No, I didn't. Okay, I didn't.
So
know
they're. I think there's a big panic button being pushed right now. Nobody was talking about how bad BYU's defense was a week ago or a year ago, and they'll. Coach Tuiaki, has been with Kalani for a long time, and they'll work something out.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, let's take it to halftime. We got a special treat for you for halftime. Trying to revamp the format here. We're going to have just a quick conversation with our good friend Jim Burton here for a few minutes in the halftime break. So why don't you, our listeners and viewers, enjoy that, and I'll take a sip of the drink in the meantime.
Yeah, and by the way, Jim Burton was a longtime sports writer at the Standard Examiner, covered the Utah Jazz. He was also a sports columnist up there. So he knows his stuff, and he knew the Jazz well during recent years, and it's interesting the perspective he's going to share with us on the state of the Utah Jazz.
Yeah. So without further ado, here's Jim Burton.
My first thought, I was gonna do a lot of research and make sure I had a bunch of information on how the Jazz are doing this year and what it's going to look like, and I decided to go another direction. I do think if I could offer them a suggestion, I would for this season alone, and hopefully just this season, I would come up with a special slogan for the team and maybe put it on some T-shirts, put it on some banners downtown. It would be Tank Note. Tank Note. You remember a few years ago it was Take Note, but we're going to do Tank Note now because, well, they're in the tank mode, and it's I don't know. For me personally, I spent 10 seasons covering the Jazz in the NBA from 2005 to 2015, and so I got to see the Jazz up close. I saw the Jazz, the Larry Miller, Jerry Sloan, Kevin O'Connor Jazz, and let me throw Darren Williams' name in there too. The Darren Williams Jazz, and they went a little farther in the playoffs between the time I was covering them than the guys have recently. So, or at least as far, I guess. I'll say this. My thought is that to put faith in Danny Ainge. But I'm a little frustrated with how things are going. Just personally, I've been out of the NBA loop for a little while, but I will say that having known Jerry and Larry both, and having had some time to talk with both those guys over the years, I know that was just kind of my first thought when I saw what the Jazz were heading for this year, and I thought about Jerry and how just absolutely disgusted he would be at the even the very thought of punting. Just kind of, well, we're gonna, which it certainly seems like that's where the Jazz are going. I thought of Larry would just he would not be thrilled about this at all. Those guys played to win, and just the concept of not it was a little frustrating. I think it's a lot to ask. Honestly, I think as a play, if you look at it from the player's perspective, I think I'd have a little bit hard time with that. But that's just the idea of we're not we're going to go out there and try to win, but we're not going to always give ourselves the best chance to win. And we hope you guys go along with this so we can draft someone that'll take your job. That I don't think I would sign off on it. I know that that Jerry and Larry both, R.I.P. to both, would not be thrilled about that. Would not stand for it. So those are that's kind of my initial thought. Is if this is something that maybe needs to be done, and I understand that this is the way the game is kind of played now. But it doesn't mean you really have to like it. And so I it's frustrating for me. I know that, and I think in terms of the fans as well, I know it's frustrating for them too. It's got to be, absolutely has to be frustrating. So that's probably not 5 minutes yet. But,
Jimbo, you got 1 minute. Let's
okay, 1 minute.
You need to promote your book here.
Okay. You say that? Do that now?
Sure.
Okay. Well, speaking of the Jazz, there's some in this book that I wrote a couple of years ago after the sports writing career kind of came to an end. I wrote this book. This is a one of those copies they give you, not for resale, sorry. Sidelined, and it's just a bunch of stories. It's a collection of some fun stories that I came up with, or not came, the things that happened to me during my sports writing career with the in 25 years covering all kinds of sports around the state. And there's some pretty funny stories in there. There's some poignant stories in there. I think people will like it. It's on Amazon. You Google the name, Google or type in my name and the name sidelined, and it'll come up. Buy it and make me happy.
Hey, we've got to do it. For disclosure, Jimbo and I worked together for several years, Daily Utah Chronicle, and we crossed paths as professionals. Jimbo at the Standard Examiner and me at the Deseret News, and we did some work for Associated Press and all that. I take it some of our stories will stay in the vault.
Well, I was going to say that I put some really some fun stories in there. There's so many more that didn't make it. Many of them involving Rick Majerus, and some involving Majerus and nudity, which I don't want to go any farther than that.
That's two words I didn't want to hear crossed together.
No, you don't. But one of these days, maybe on a podcast, sometimes I'll spin a yarn about the late great Rick Majerus. But yeah, Dirk, I've spared us. Some of the times the names have been changed to protect the innocent, as they say. So yes,
the adventures of Rod Frazier or just some kind of pseudonym for you. We'll have to think of it. Anyway,
that's true. I like it.
Yeah. Anyway, Jimbo, before we close out, we're going to hit you with 5 rapid fire questions now. A few are sports related, a few aren't. I guess we'll just start with an old school jazz.
Rapid fire.
An old school jazz question for you. If you had to pick one of the two, who would you pick, John Stockton or Karl Malone for your team?
Ooh. I love the mailman. The guy's
this is rapid
an absolute beast. Oh, sorry. Stockton.
Stockton, got it.
Okay, number 2. Is cereal a soup?
No, it's not a soup. It's a breakfast food.
But it's in liquid. There's some sort of liquid form. It's in a bowl. There are chunks. Anyway, so that's the argument there. Okay. Third question though. Do you keep up with the Kardashians?
I don't, unfortunately.
Okay.
All right, Jimbo, here's a tough one. Number 4. Cheetos or chips?
Chips.
Okay, and question number 5. In your mind, who's the real home run MVP or home run king, single season record holder? Is it dirty Barry Bonds or clean Aaron Judge? or Hank Aaron.
It's
For the all time. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it's Hank for the all time, and squeaky clean Aaron Judge, who I really like. Yeah, I'm going Judge, not Bonds. No way.
Awesome.
Well, Jim, thanks for being our guest. Next week we're going to give away a copy of your book, and hopefully you'll autograph it for us.
I certainly would be glad to do that. Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Jimbo.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Good seeing you.
Good to see
Bye.
you. Be safe. Thanks, Jimbo.
You bet, man. Did I mess up that 5 minutes thing?
No.
Is that what it was supposed to be? Me talking for 5 minutes?
Well, we're still getting it. We were probably not supposed to ask you a few questions along the way.
Oh, see, I just realized that. So if you want to do that one again, I'll do it. That's
I
fine.
think
But
you handled it well. You talked about good stuff, and everything I was going to ask you, you covered. So,
well, I did. I kind of botched that one. So sorry.
We'll do this. We'll do this quite often, and then
Good. Have me on a lot. I love it. It's fun.
Let's sell some books, baby.
And yes, you do know all the Majerus stories anyway.
Oh, I do. I think people love to hear them.
I remember, you know how old we are now. On his 50th birthday was one of those. That was the one in Provo. When his buddy said, "Go in there, go ahead and talk to him." Majerus went, "You can come on in." So anyway, all right, boys.
The water's good. Okay.
So big thanks to Jim Burton for joining us for halftime. What did you use to refresh yourself during the break?
We went to my wife's favorite place, Twisted Sugar, and got one of their fine beverages, and I'm just enjoying it.
That's great. Cool. I had a little Mountain Dew, so that's terrific. Anyway, we've been giving the listener a lot of stuff to chew on. But let's get probably to the biggest sports story of the last week. Obviously being Utah's come from behind victory over USC at Rice-Eccles Stadium in a game that many people are calling the most exciting college football game ever played in Salt Lake City at Rice-Eccles Stadium.
Kyle Whittingham said it, right?
Kyle Whittingham said that. You've seen many games at Rice-Eccles Stadium. I've seen many games. I think it's up there. I haven't yet processed whether or not it is the most exciting. I imagine it probably felt like it. Are you willing to give that game that title?
For excitement, yes, and the fact that Utah went for the 2-point conversion to win the game made it very exciting against a top 10 team, USC, a cocky USC team.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a lot riding on it. You think of other wins, some of the exciting BYU Utah games, you could argue were just as exciting, if not more, just given the rivalry and all that. And then Utah's had some big wins over, Michigan and teams that have rolling through. So, but it's got to rank up there. And it was an exciting game. And I think the 2-point conversion kind of said it all.
Oh, yeah.
Utah went for the win and they got it. And, Cameron Rising was amazing when they have 2 touchdowns passing, 415 yards, and then he rushed for 60 yards and 3 scores, and he scored the 2-point conversion. And boy, what a performance! And Utah looked really, really good, and left Lincoln Riley a little ticked off when he left. He thought the officiating had something to do with it,
and he's dead wrong. I thought the officiating definitely tilted more in USC's favor. I think they gave them every opportunity possible to win. The 2-point conversion obviously was like the climax of the excitement. It reminded me so much of the TCU game in 2008. You remember when Freddie Brown scored that short touchdown pass from Brian Johnson with like a minute 13 or something crazy like that to take the lead, and it ended up really being the deciding factor in their undefeated season. Do you remember that Freddie Brown touchdown?
Absolutely. There's a lot of excitement, but gosh, the 2-point conversion though was a gutsy call because the general rule of thumb, at least people have, is that if you're at home, you kick and
you're aggressive on the road is what they say.
On the road you go for the 2, but Kyle Whittingham at the press conference after said that, they were gonna get in there if there wasn't much time left in the game, and they were going to go for the 2-point conversion, and it executed it well. And Cameron Rising, I think, is the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week, and won a bunch of National Player of the Week
Dalton
awards.
Kincaid won a bunch as well for his performance.
Dalton Kincaid, 16 receptions.
That's a lot.
That's fantastic. And Braden Daniels, I think, was the Pac-12 Lineman of the Week. Just a real good week for the Utes, and it obviously enhances their chances of getting back to the Pac-12 championship game. They're still going to need a little help. You have to see what UCLA does and what Oregon does, but Utah does play Oregon head-to-head, so they can knock that one out of the park. If they have, if they're tied with the SC and Oregon and they have wins over both, there's your tiebreaker right there. So be interesting to see if they end up playing UCLA if they get to that championship game.
Yeah, so let's talk about the aesthetics of the game. The helmets with the portraits of Ty Jordan and Aaron Lowe.
Right.
Real nice touch, I thought. I know you're a traditional uniform guy. Table that for a sec. What that whole night was a pretty touching tribute and capped off by a win.
Well, those helmets were beautiful, and that's no other way of saying it. It was a nice tribute to the guys, and I have to think there was plenty of motivation for the Utes to play there.
Yeah, I know they had they gave the game balls to Aaron and Ty's moms after the game. I'm not going to say too much more because it might make me cry, but it was a really cool night, and it was just the kind of the perfect way to pay tribute to those guys. I think there was definitely, like, if you're a spiritual person, I think you would definitely feel like there was a presence there. And it was needed, and I think it carried the Utes to the win, and it was pretty cool.
Real feel-good Saturday up on the hill.
Yep, definitely. So let's wrap up here with our fourth quarter. We're going to talk a little MLB. You're wearing a Mariners hat right now. Mariners, of course, were swept by the Astros. Here's my takeaway from the it's probably the best I've ever felt after seeing one of my favorite teams get swept. Is that how you're feeling?
Yeah, and then the fact is they got eliminated. You could argue that the series went 4 games.
Easily, yeah.
Because of the long affair in Game 3. But Houston looks like they may be the team to beat in the playoffs now, and just as far as winning the World Series and that. But Seattle gave it all they could. They just couldn't get any runs scored in that last game. But, the sad thing is my wife and your mama said we could go to the World Series if the Mariners made it.
We'll have to wait yet another year.
She thinks we were joking.
I don't think we were.
We were going. And we don't get to go. So that's the bummer of it.
Yeah, that's tough.
But the good thing is our guys finally made the playoffs, and
had a good showing
about that. Yeah, they had a good showing, and then, boy, let's go over to the National League. And who would have thought the Dodgers would get knocked
What
off?
on earth? Why? How could that happen?
And there's a team that would love to beat them more than anybody, and it may be the San Diego Padres with the Southern California rivalry there.
Yep.
And the fact that the Dodgers have kind of owned them in recent years. So it was kind of exciting to see the Padres celebrate and enjoy. But then you think about the Padres, and they got Soto.
I mean, they spent plenty of money themselves.
They've spent tons of money. Yeah. So it's like, okay,
it would have been a lot more fun.
Boys club do you like them the most?
Yeah, it would have been a lot more fun if someone like the Pod or like the Pirates or someone had been able to, that would never happen. But
and what about the Phillies? Knocking off the defending champs. So, I know Atlanta was not the same team without Freddie Freeman,
right?
But they were good enough to get as far as they did.
So got some good young guys. Yeah,
and they're tough out, and it'd be interesting to see if Harper and the guys can get to the World Series, because that's another team that's spent some money over the recent years. And, Phillies, Padres, I mean, who would have thought it? But it could be intriguing, and it could go 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, we won't know who will play the Astros quite yet because the Yankees game got delayed due to rain tonight.
Right.
It would be kind of funny if the Yankees lost.
That would, the Guardians. I mean, stupid name, but the Guardians could be in
Guardians Phillies World Series.
Yeah.
I don't think is anything anybody would have predicted. So
No, it's something that sounds like it should have happened in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
You know, the Cleveland Indians versus the Philadelphia Phillies. But
Yeah.
you know, now they're the Guardians. It's a little rebranding, and you know, I just don't know if anybody can get past the Houston Astros. They look so dominant against the Seattle Mariners, and
they seem
they've
to
got
they seem to have the best
pitching.
pitching. Yeah, and I think that'll carry the day.
And so that, you know, Houston may be the team to beat, you know, considering we know 3 of the 4 teams in there. And even if the Yankees get there, I think they're going to have a tough time with Houston.
Yeah, I think when the pitching gets hot, I think it's hard to overcome. And I think Houston's pitching seems pretty lights
Posted
out right
a
now.
lot of goose eggs against the Mariners.
They posted 17 or 18 innings of goose eggs in Game 3. So good for them. All right, it's cool. So let's just take a second here. Do you want to reconfigure your World Series prediction? Who do you think is going to win the World Series?
Reconfigure, you know, as much as I'm not a big Houston Astros fan, especially after the allegations that surfaced in recent years about them not being
Well, with
on
the
the up
garbage
and
cans and all that? Come
the
on.
garbage cans and that. So, but I think Houston is the team to beat. The team I'd like to see win it. It'd be kind of cool if the San Diego Padres won the World Series.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to agree with you there. I think that's the way I stand. Cool. So 4 quarters in the books. Big thanks to Jim Burton again for joining us for the halftime segment. Let's just do some parting shots and we'll wrap this thing up. What do you have for a parting shot?
My parting shot today is on Kyle Whittingham. You know, I think a lot's been made of his tenure as coach. He's the winningest coach in Utah history, and I think one of the more interesting things is with the win over Lincoln Riley. You know, some of the high-profile, highest-paid coaches in the game today. Kyle's beaten them all. He beat Nick Saban in the Sugar Bowl, Alabama. He beat Jim Harbaugh, Michigan. So Utah, you got a treasure there, and you should enjoy him. And he's got a perfect record against those high-priced, high-profile coaches.
I'm going to do 2 parting shots. My first parting shot, we don't really acknowledge this team very much because we're not soccer fans. We're unapologetically not soccer fans. But I think we need to acknowledge that Real Salt Lake kind of had a really exciting rally to finish the year to qualify for the playoffs. I know last night they were ultimately eliminated in penalty kicks by Austin FC, something like that.
Yeah, well, you know, your mom and I watched the.
Whoa, get out!
Yeah,
no
we
way.
actually watched the end of the.
That shocks. I'm almost falling out of my seat right now. I can't.
We
Really,
watched the end of regulation, and we watched the 30-minute
the stoppage time,
whatever
the overtime,
they
whatever they call it.
and then the shootout, and they looked like they were out of gas. They gave it all they had, and I think people should be proud. And it would have been interesting if they snuck through again like they did last year, because they barely got in the playoffs last year and made quite a run in the postseason.
Yeah.
They had it this year. A red card really hurt them towards the end of the game, because they were playing a man down, and they still forced it all the way to a shootout. And I just can't believe my wife and I watched it.
I can't believe it either. Okay. So my thought on Real was just, it seems like the change in ownership is going to be a good thing. I had never heard a lot of good things about the previous ownership in terms of the way people were treated and all that. So it seems like the new ownership under
built good houses, supposedly.
Yeah, sure. Under David Blitzer and Ryan Smith and Dwayne Wade is going to be a lot better for that team and for the fans who support them around here. My second parting shot, what was it? It was NFL talk. I think we need to talk about how Brian Johnson, former Utah great, is doing an unbelievable job as the quarterbacks coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's turned Jalen Hurts into probably one of the best players in football right now, and I'm sure a huge part of that credit has to go to BJ, has to go to Brian Johnson, and I think we talk about this all the time. Like, it's probably only a matter of years, a very short amount of time until he becomes a head coach at either the collegiate level or possibly even in the NFL.
Yeah, well, and let's not forget who he coached in college too, Dax Prescott.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
I mean,
Yeah, Mississippi State.
So you could argue that two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now were under his tutelage. And
Yeah.
so now Brian Johnson, he's a great guy. He did a great job at Utah. You know, he stepping in to replace Alex Smith was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to, get them to the Sugar Bowl MVP.
Yep.
And, his pro career never really panned out, but, he became a coach and was offensive coordinator at Utah.
Probably a little too young for that job then, but yeah, has
moved on, and picked up some things along the road and ended up in the NFL, and he's doing great.
Yep. So his stock is flying high. So anyway, thanks for tuning in to another episode of This is the Play Sports, the podcast. You know what I forgot to do at the start of the show?
What's that?
I forgot to introduce who we were to new listeners, in case we have new listeners.
Oh.
I'm Austin Facer, joined by Dirk Facer here, the old man, my dad. We're a couple of professional sports writers here in Utah, father and son duo. We think we're pretty funny. We think we're pretty clever. I don't know.
We are.
And we are, by the way. We don't just think that, we are.
But no, we appreciate you listening and going to our website, thisistheplaysports.com. We've got links to everything. We write original sports content, and
we get our dogs to help record videos with us. So a lot of fun stuff.
So it's a lot of things, and we're a one-stop shop. And again, appreciate it, and tell your friends.
Thank you very much. We're going to have a drawing for Jimbo's book next week. So make sure you head to the bottom of our page, thisistheplaysports.com. There's a submission form there. Ask for your email address and your physical address. We're not going to bug you at your physical address. We just need to know where to send the book to.
And we're going to spin the wheel.
We're going to spin the wheel and determine a winner next week. So make sure you sign up. And thanks for tuning in.